The abuse started when I was 10 years old. I'd be laying with my dad in bed, in my parents' bedroom, watching TV. My mom would work third shift, and one night he asked me if I knew what sexual parts were. I felt very disgusted, very dirty. From there, he continued to push himself on me. He would coerce me into rubbing against him or grinding on top of him, acting as if we were having sex. I was very confused. I accepted it because I was 10. On one occasion, Earl asked me to come down to his room. He would leave the door cracked and having sex with my mom, and he wanted me to watch. I did it because I wanted to please him. By the time I was 11, we were actually having sex. This was happening about 4 nights a week, and the nights my mom would be working. Finally got the courage to tell my mom. She immediately talked to Earl, but he made it seem like we were just cuddling on the couch together. After that, the whole thing was just swept under the rug. As I got older, the abuse continued. I knew that as soon as my mom would walk out the door, my dad would have sex with me. It was very terrifying. By the time I was about 15, I didn't want my mom having sex with him. I was his. I belonged to him. I was extremely brainwashed and manipulated by him at that point. So much so that I felt that I was in love with him.
At 11 years old, Amanda says she tried to tell her mother what was going on, but Earl explained it away. He said, look, it was just innocent cuddling on the couch. Then 7 years ago, when Amanda was now 18, she tried to tell her family about the abuse, but then she recanted.
I became very rebellious. I started acting out because of what was happening to me. I was screaming for attention in very negative ways, and my mom sent me to a counselor. I ended up telling my grandmother and my counselor that my father had been molesting me. Immediately, CPS and the police got involved, and they began interviewing my family. But Earl had me very well wrapped around his finger. Earl told me we had a special bond. Nobody would ever come between us. Nobody would ever understand our relationship. And if I told anyone about it, I'd be ripped from my family. My family would be torn apart. I decided to protect my family's happiness and sacrifice my own. I refused to cooperate with the police, I refused to cooperate with CPS, and I refused to comment to them about anything that had happened. They didn't have a victim, so they couldn't have a case, and the investigation eventually was closed. I had been suffering this abuse for 10 years, and for me, it wasn't gonna stop. I had given up my chance to break free.
Well, she says when she gave up that chance, her twisted relationship with her stepfather continued on. It lasted through her engagement, her marriage, and even after the birth of her first child.
About 2 months after my daughter was born, I was at my parents' house and my dad asked me to expose myself to him. I knew that I was right back in that place where I started. I was right back there. I just really thought it was over, and it wasn't. Sometime later, I was visiting my parents, and my dad and I were in the garage. I just remember being pushed up against this table, and my dad is doing what he always has done. After that, we started having sex about once a week. It was almost not an option for me to be able to break away from this because I had a husband whose heart would break if his wife told him what had been happening to her. I had a mother that her husband's been doing this to her daughter for 15 years and she's so blind to it that she can't see the truth. There was no option for me. I had to do what I had to do. One of the final straws came when Earl told me that he tried to make the perfect daughter out of me and failed, so he would have to start over with my daughter. A friend of mine and my counselor urged me to call the police.
Your family, you say across the board, does not believe you.
They don't believe me.
Are you a pathological liar?
I am not.
Have you given them reason to doubt you? I mean, have you lied about other things throughout your life?
I mean, I guess when I recanted my statement, that was a little confusing for everybody. And I'm sure that when I was 11, and I told and Earl manipulated the situation and I agreed with him, I mean, I'm sure that's all confusing for them.
How did it feel when your mother did believe you and she did say, I'm sorry that happened to you?
It was scary because I thought he was going to get in trouble, and I thought that, you know, my family would be completely torn apart. I mean, when you tell something like that, it's pretty
But this is when you're 11.
Yes.
And so then he's actually coming home at that time, right?
Yeah.
So
shortly after.
this confrontation takes place out in his vehicle in the driveway.
Yes.
You go out there with your mother?
She went out first and then called me out after.
Okay. And by the time she called you out there, had he flipped her?
Yes.
By the time you got out there, he had already convinced her not true.
Yes.
So when you got in the car, what was the attitude?
My mom didn't say anything the entire time we were in the car. My dad basically just started talking, and he asked me what made me feel uncomfortable. And before I could answer, he kind of answered for me and said, was it the cuddling? You know, cuddling on the couch, is that what made you feel uncomfortable? And I agreed. I said, yeah. And I was too afraid to say, no, it was the other stuff.
My daughter Amanda is completely lying about my husband raping or molesting her. I know 150% that nothing like this happened. In 2009, when Amanda accused Earl of molesting her and recanted, she told me herself that she lied. She said she knew we were having difficulties in our marriage. She thought it would make it easier for me to leave and get custody of my other 2 children.
I never told my mom that I made up this molestation story to destroy their marriage.
When Amanda went back to the police last year with the same story, a lot of things just weren't adding up. Her dates and times weren't adding up. Places that she said it happened, she said that he tried to lift up her skirt on Mother's Day. She wasn't even wearing a skirt, she was wearing jogging pants. We even had multiple cameras in the garage and outside of the garage where she said a lot of the molestation happened that were hardwired to my TV. So when I hear all of these allegations, it makes it very hard to believe. I am convinced that Amanda did this solely for attention. Amanda has always wanted to write a book. This is a Lifetime movie, and Amanda wrote the script.
Well, Earl Nix adopted Amanda when she was 5 years old. 20 years later, he sits behind bars, convicted of 6 counts of first-degree criminal sexual conduct and 2 counts of third-degree sexual conduct for what he did to Amanda. Now, her mother, Dee Dee, says it's all lies. He didn't do anything to Amanda, and she joins us now. So I'm glad you're here. How do you come to the conclusion that your daughter is lying about this and the man you married is telling the truth?
Because I know them both. There were 5 people that lived in that house. We walked on eggshells.
Because your daughter was being molested by your husband.
But I don't believe that. And it has nothing to do with him manipulating me.
You're right. It has everything to do with you not being a mother.
If that's what you feel.
Well,
You were not the greatest daughter either.
Because since I was 10, your husband has been having sex with me. How do you think that I'm supposed to act? Especially when you call me a liar. When you
Okay, if
support
you
him.
say that for 14 years, he's supposedly been doing this. 7, you didn't live in our home, and you initiated and charged him money. I don't understand that. I don't understand a lot of facts to this story. I can pick out things that you've said in your story, and I know that's not true. I know it didn't happen.
Really? Because you said I was actually wearing jogging pants on Mother's Day.
You were.
I had a pink and white polka dot dress on,
No,
and
you
I
didn't.
have pictures to prove it. When he was laying down in his bed watching TV and I went to say goodbye to him, he tried to lift it up, and you all were sitting in the living room. I
No.
went in there by myself. Why are you lying?
No, why are you lying, Amanda? That's what I want to know.
okay, well, what I want to know is there something you know that makes you comfortable in believing that this man did not do this?
There's more than one thing, Dr. Phil, and just the amount of time alone. If we take the low number of 795 times, and then you calculate all the stuff that has happened in our lives, the surgeries, the vacations, the times that she testified herself didn't happen, it would have had to happen over 4 times a week. And that's just not even something that is a thing. She wasn't even at our house that often.
For a period of 8 years, she was in the house,
Yes,
from 10 to
First half.
18.
yes.
You believed her when she told you at 11.
She didn't tell me at 11. Everybody keeps telling me that she told me when she was 11, and I don't remember her telling me.
I was shaking when the jury came back. The judge asked if they had a verdict, and they said yes. And they began reading all the counts, and I heard guilty. And I just stared at the ceiling, and I just thanked God for finally making this happen. They didn't believe him, they believed me. That was the first time that that's ever happened. And it felt great. He couldn't manipulate the jury, and he could no longer manipulate me.
Amanda claims her stepfather, Earl Nix, molested and raped her from the age of 10 to 25. It wasn't an affair, it wasn't sex, it was rape. She says she told her grandmother Sharon in 2009, who in turn called Dee Dee and told her. Sharon says Dee Dee has allowed Earl to control her every thought and has even turned Dee Dee against her own daughter.
My daughter Dee Dee doesn't believe that anything happened to Amanda. She believes Amanda made the whole story up out of spite. When Amanda was about 10 or 11 years old, I got a phone call from Dee Dee, and she told me Amanda had just told her that Earl was messing around with her. I told her, Dee Dee, bring the kids over here and we'll figure this out. She never came over. She called me back and said Amanda made up the story.
That never happened. Even if I had told her that, knowing my mom, there's no way she would have let that go.
One time I was babysitting for Dee Dee and Earl, and as I walked in the front door, Earl came walking down the hallway from the kids' bedroom, straightening his pants, and I just thought that didn't look good. On another occasion, Earl lay down on the floor in front of the television on his back. Amanda laid down on top of his legs, and her face was directly in his lap, and I looked at my daughter, and she looked away. Even in pictures, I noticed that Amanda would be clinging on him, hanging on him, holding his hand, having her arm wrapped in his like a girlfriend would. Several times over the years, I've tried to talk to my daughter, but she just brushed me off and told me I was imagining things.
My mom claims that I always knew and that I put my head in the sand. Well, if she always knew, why didn't she do anything about it? If I suspected that my granddaughter was being sexually abused, I don't care who I offended, I would call the authorities.
Well, Sharon, thank you for being here. Who knew what and when did they know it?
Well, I'm sitting here listening, and I've sat through the trial, and I don't know why, Dee Dee, that you don't remember calling me, but you called me right after Mandy told you that the very first time when you
This
were...
is at 11 years of age.
Yes. And you said, I'll call you back, Mom. And I said, okay. And then when you did call me back is when you told me that you had been outside with Mandy and Earl, and that Mandy had said that it wasn't true. And I don't know why you can't remember that.
I don't remember that.
Well, it doesn't surprise me because your grandmother was just like that too. Anything bad, they don't remember.
Don't
That is
bring
the
my
truth.
grandmother into
Listen,
this.
I
Do
raised
not bring
you.
my grandmother into this.
She's my mother, and I can bring up anything I want
She'd
to,
be
first
ashamed
of
of
all.
You're my mother.
And you are my mother.
I am your
You are my
Yell
mother.
at me.
You
Do
are
not
my
yell at
mother.
me.
Don't abandon me.
We are adults.
Don't
Do
abandon
not
me.
yell at
Yeah,
me.
we are adults, aren't we?
And it's exactly why you shouldn't call me a liar. You should have more respect for me, too, because you did call me.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
I don't remember
Well, I
calling
don't
you.
care if you remember or not, because I do remember,
So,
Dee Dee. Like
you
you
take
said,
it
a
on
grandmother
your
isn't going to
place.
let that go. So when you called me, my heart fell to the floor. Don't tell me what I heard and what I
Don't
didn't
yell at
hear.
me.
I'll yell at you anytime I want to,
No, you
because
won't.
you can yell at my granddaughter
Dr.
that's
Phil,
your daughter.
I'm
Well,
done. Personal weapon.
Oh, no, I don't.
Yes, you did.
Let's not deflect this situation here. We're here talking about your daughter.
Caleb,
And
I'm
What do you
done.
want him to do?
You're embarrassing yourself.
do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.